And I think we are live. Okay, so hello, good morning, slash good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is called Investing in the Balkans, Emerging Opportunities in Energy Infrastructure. So my name is Karan Baisal. I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager at INVR, and I'm delighted to be the moderator of this webinar today. As we have seen in the recent years as well, the Balkans region is rapidly becoming one of Europe's most promising destination for energy investment. And this is why we decided to have our second webinar for the Balkans Energy Summit as well, that is going to happen in April 29th and April 30th as well in Athens, Greece. So mainly, as I said, there's a lot of opportunities in the Balkans. There's a lot of investments going on within the region itself. And I'm here with Mr. Miroslav as well, the management board member at INA, and Mrs. Marcia, who is the head of SEE sales region at Montel, who will be telling us more regarding their expertise in the region and the emerging opportunities as well in the energy infrastructure as well in the region, how we can invest more in the Balkans, telling us a specific kind of insights going on within the region itself. So I will be himself right now. For sure. So, Mr. Miroslav, the mic is yours to introduce yourself.
Thank you. No, the line was lost for the second, so I didn't hear you.
No
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Miroslav Skalitski. I'm based in Zagreb. I'm just about few words about myself. I'm almost 40 years in the energy industry. I used to work for Shell. I was a general manager of Shell office in Croatia until 2003. Then I spent several years working for Shell in their Italy office in Italy, Milan office. After that, almost 1 year in London office. And then in 2008, I decided to start my own company. I worked in my own company until 2022. But also working in my own company, I was involved in energy business only. And since September 2002, I'm a member of INA management board. INA is the biggest regional oil and gas company or energy company.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Miroslav, as well for the introduction. I'm sure INA is a very company based in Croatia that everyone knows as well. So moving on to Mrs. Marcia, that is going to introduce herself from Montel. Montel is also the knowledge partner of the 9th Balkans Energy Summit as well. So Mrs. Marcia, if you can introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, Karen, thank you so much, first of all. And yes, we are looking forward to your event in Athens in April. And again, we are proud to be a knowledge partner for the event again. So basically, when it comes to my background, it comes again from trading sector, both in private and public sector. And currently, I'm based in Slovenia. So Miroslav and myself, we are neighbors almost. And so basically in Montel currently I am working in a sales department, but also the team for basically PPA consultancies. So that's very short from my side, but looking forward to the webinar. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Mrs. Marcia. It's a pleasure to have Montel with us, our knowledge partner as well, which would be so much efficient in this webinar to have some insights regarding the region as well. So I'm just going to start with Mr. Miroslav with the first question, which is, Mr. Miroslav, how do you see the investment climate evolving for the energy infrastructure projects in the Balkans? Mainly, what are the key factors, driving or hindering the investment as well? What kind of, investment is going on in the Balkans that you would like to see? Any kind of opportunities that you would like to emphasize off as well?
Yeah, thanks, Karan, for a question. Basically, I can say it's very diverse and dynamic region. and maybe I would focus my answer mainly on the West Balkan region. So mainly on countries of former Yugoslavia. I mean, for me, if I will put in the first part of my answer geopolitical situation on the side, but few facts. First of all, we have two countries, Slovenia and Croatia, that are members of EU, and all other countries are not members. And basically, rules, investment climate, it's quite different from countries that are members of EU and members for quite a long number of years, compared to countries that are still far from joining the EU. That's one thing. Another thing, you have quite high level of stability in Croatia and Slovenia. And from the media, we can see some currently not very stable situation, political, but also then reflected on energy sector, especially in Serbia, and more politically in Bosnia. When I mentioned energy sector, you know that I'm going back now in oil and gas segment. We know that, for example, refinery owned by, or the biggest oil company in Serbia is majority owned by a Russian company. And there is a threat of sanctions being involved. And in that case, Serbia will not have access to the crude. So basically all the crude, vast majority of crude coming to the refinery in Pančevo is coming through JANAF or through the old pipeline coming from Croatia to Serbia. So that's really one of the key issues. So there are many things, and maybe just to divide things from renewables energy and standard oil and gas business. So if you think about oil and gas, definitely Slovenia and Croatia are nice regions to invest. Basically, if you look at infrastructure, what's going on in Croatia, recently a new gas pipeline that will double capacity was opened, and there will be a huge additional capacity of LNG available for Hungary, further on to southern part of Germany, Slovakia, but also to Slovenia. On top of that, capacities of LNG terminal in Croatia will be doubled next year. Same applies for JANAF pipeline that used to be and still is supply of crude oil to Serbia and then to Hungarian and Slovakian refineries as well. But the question is whether sanctions will change the situation or not. But definitely Croatia is sort of local, getting and becoming sort of, let's say, local hub for imports of LNG and crude oil for this part of the Europe. Mm-hmm. When I say LNG, not only for this part, West Balkan, when I say LNG, I also think of the West Europe, so also Hungary, Austria. That's one thing. Traditional oil and gas business, I'm not expecting anything new to happen in other parts of former Yugoslavia countries. I'm not expecting any particular investments, and that there is any interest basically to invest. Now going on renewables, this is absolutely very interesting region. So, but again, legislation, so in terms of tariffs, is it feed-in, is it premium model, whatever, depends from the situation where the country is in EU or not. Croatia is quite developed in terms of renewables energy, especially wind and solar. Same applies for Serbia. In Serbia, we can see quite a lot of investment, but also starting in Bosnia. We have some in Macedonia as well. So if we put some instabilities in some of the countries, definitely in terms of environment, availability of wind and sun, I think it's a good region to invest, absolutely. I would say, again, putting political issues on the side, the key issue is also infrastructure. And I think grid is a big problem in all countries. So if you think of Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, grid connection is big issue. For example, in Croatia, there are a number of projects ready to start, but the issue is grid and they cannot get the connection permit to start with investment. Besides wind and sun, when we talk about renewables, I would mention also geothermal energy, and this part of the Europe, not only West Balkan, I can now include also Hungary, but this Pannon Basin is a very good source of geothermal energy. So geothermal gradient in Croatia, for example, is almost 200 degrees, where in Western Europe is less than 100 degrees. So it's not only INA, but also quite a lot of other countries, companies are investing in geothermal projects in Croatia, but I think that will come soon. That might come also soon to Serbia. That is partly all part of the territory of Serbia is also reasonably well sourced with geothermal energy. So my general recommendation would be, yes, there are a lot of opportunities. There are issues in terms of legislation. There are some geopolitical issues as well. But I mean, potential investors should monitor. And yes, sometimes where situation is not perfect might be the ideal time to enter.
Exactly. I agree with you, Mr. Mirasolo. For sure, the legalization, the framework, the regulations, of course, and the Balkans can affect the investment, of course. But we are seeing a lot of improvement within the couple of the past months as well. Even during the 9th Balkans Energy Summit, we also have a lot of panels regarding legalization, regarding, of course, it's all about the grid kind of a situation going on, and also the framework about the Balkans, legalization, and of course how we can bring more investors to that region as well. And this is why we are having the 9th Balkans Energy Summit, is actually to attract more investors to come to the Balkans and actually invest within the region, of course, and to see and to meet, of course, the key industry players and mainly the main speakers as well. The governments as well that can contribute to this event as well. So we can, of course, solve the problems and everything regarding legalization and others. Of course, I'm going to move on to Mrs. Marcia. I'm going to ask her, of course, the first question. Mrs. Marcia, so from your perspective, what are, the key opportunities for investors looking to enter the region energy sector, mainly in the Balkans? And what do you think is the main, opportunities, or having, what kind of thing that the Balkans have that no other markets can have? For example, what is really something in the Balkans that is only in the Balkans? Not everyone has it as well.
Okay, Mr. Miroslav already actually started this topic a little bit with mentioning basically all the renewables, new projects from renewable sources that are basically booming in last few years. So that's definitely one of the first things to mention when it comes to key opportunities for investors. So basically our region with so many different countries and markets, of course, with its complexity as well when it comes to regulation and other geopolitical, let's say, topics that we are facing. And they do not look like they will actually change in a time to come. But when it comes to investing in this region, so basically having the projects from renewable energy sources, especially wind and solar, those two are basically the crucial ones. And I would have to mention that there is, in whole Balkans, there is a big potential for new hydro units as well. But I would have to mention that with the existing hydro units that we already have, there is also big potential basically to utilize them a bit better. And that's very, very important from the aspects of basically grid flexibility, and to use all those units in a way to support basically all this boost of renewable energy sources that we are seeing lately. Also, another thing to mention when it comes to investing in Balkans region is definitely connected to storage. So with all these renewables that have entered the basically the market, we are facing from country to country to problems when it comes to actually balancing all of them. Then, of course, when we have oversupply from those sources. So even now, for example, if we, let's say, mention Greece, only until now they already had 20% of cutting basically the production from, I think, mainly from solar, basically. And last year it was around 12% of cutting production from solar. So it definitely brings up a very, very important question of storage. And if all countries would follow the what Greece has done, actually, because last week we do have information that Greece is offering 4.7 gigawatts of battery storage connection to transmission and distribution network. So this is obviously going to solve that problem, at least in some extent. So if other countries would follow this and basically give the opportunity to investors to actually invest in those kinds of projects, then it will again open even more potential for new renewable projects. And this capacity is actually not even linked to the government subsidiary scheme. So this is something beyond that. So this is definitely something that other countries should follow. And for example, just to compare it, for example, in Croatia, when it comes to battery storage, and it was discussed, I think, last week on one event, and actually government got, they said that they will actually send an update when it comes to their plans for storage for next few years. And basically they only have it in plan in last draft. They only have plan for 50 megawatts of storage. So that's too little, especially when we compare it to all these new projects that are already installed and the ones that are in plan. So having new projects for battery storage is definitely one of the key topics here if we want to continue on this path towards transition and having more renewable sources, and at the end replacing at least one part of the quantities produced from coal units within clean energy. And that's the second thing. So the first thing is, of course, boosting more renewable projects and they have to be followed with storage projects as well. Not to even mention, of course, improving grid, improving flexibility of the grid as well, and improving the flexibility on the demand side as well. And then, of course, I would mention, of course, hydrogen projects, bioenergy and waste-to-energy projects. They might seem small when we, of course, talk about all these quantities that are building in Balkans when it comes to renewables and all the demand that we have. But it's also important to change a bit, like a kind of a perspective in our mindset, let's say, and to know that even like the smallest changes, when they basically build up, they can bring a change. And there are in especially in Serbia and Croatia currently many bioenergy and waste to energy projects that are very interesting to follow up. And least but not last is for the investors basically to follow up is our public and private, let's say, partnerships for PPAs. And one great one that we saw in last month just is the one that happened in Serbia within 15 years PPA concluded between power states, utility apps, and many private investors from solar and wind. So that's definitely something that investors should follow up, maybe together with these investment projects in Greece for storage. But of course, I'm hoping for many more of those in other countries as well. So those are basically the key things to follow up from the investor side in this region. Yeah.
We can't hear you, Karam.
You're muted.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you so much, Marcia, for the insightful answer. I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities going on in the Balkans, especially in Greece as well, Croatia as well, of course. There's a lot of opportunities for the investors to expand, and of course, the let's say the legalization or the framework in the Balkans for investors to see is changing from time to time. So of course, it's very interesting what is going on in the Balkans, and of course, the investors needs to be updated from time to time to actually see what is going on in the Balkans, how they can expand, to the Balkans region, and which kind of countries can work, of course, with them, based on what is the investors' potential in that market as well. So moving on to Mr. Miroslav for the second question that I would like to ask. So, Mr. Miroslav, how do you view the region transition towards clean energy? There's a lot of clean energy strategies that is going on in the Balkans. And, what role do you see potentially for oil and gas companies in enabling a balanced energy mix in the Balkans? How can they expand to the Balkans region? How they can become, more transition towards clean energy, of course, since you're coming from INA, mainly an oil and gas company. Of course, you can tell us more about how they can have this balanced energy mix within the Balkans itself.
Thanks, Karam. Interesting question. Yes. First of all, my personal view, oil and gas will still have more than 50% of the energy in the whole energy mix. So it will be a long time in the future when really renewables will take over. Even here in INA, basically vast majority of our profit is coming from our oil and gas business and significantly less from renewables. I will tell more about that in a minute. But also if I compare other big oil companies, traditional oil and gas companies, it's more or less the same. So if I look at our current business plan, let's say for 2025, and if I look at the capex we are going to invest in different projects, it will still be more than 80% into oil and gas business, upgrading refinery in upstream, so new drilling, new exploration, and a bit less than 20% into the renewables. But that does not mean that INA, but also oil, and this ratio 80-20, if you look at the big global players, I can see it's more or less the same. In spite of some companies a few years ago, I'm talking about big global players saying, yeah, in 5-10 years time we will invest and we will have only renewable energy. They all are making step back and saying no. I mean, simply we need to stay in oil and gas as well. So what I'm saying, I'm absolutely not against renewables. We all need to invest in renewables, but we also need to be wise and understand really what's affordable for final end users and whether we can have enough energy if we would focus only on renewables. So going back on INA, what I was saying, yes, this year and next year we will go close to 20% of our capex invested in renewable energy. We already have 2 solar power plants in production. We are currently working on green hydrogen production, and this year we will purchase electrolyzer, and I guess our green hydrogen production will start next year. This green energy, green hydrogen production, and this hydrogen basically we will be using in our refinery, because in the refining process we need a hydrogen, which we currently get from the natural gas, but in the future we'll have a green hydrogen. Also, we are going to invest in biogas, and that's also the project ongoing. Besides those two solar power plants, we are working on two more big power plants. One will be also part of within our refinery in Rijeka, and we need this electricity from solar to get to produce a green hydrogen. On top of that, we have two big projects in geothermal energy. End of this, so in next 5 to 10 days, we will start first drillings for the geothermal energy. And what I was telling you, the water temperature on 5,000 or 4,000 meters below the surface is getting close to 2,000 degrees. So we're expecting quite a lot of good business from that, not only for district heating or greenhouse heating, it will be also hopefully for electricity production, because temperature gradient is very high. On top of that, in INA, we are also currently exploring the opportunity of wind offshore. So it's worth mentioning that we currently have offshore gas production in northern part of Adriatic. So we are currently measuring the wind speed in that region to understand whether in the future, in the concessions that we currently have for gas production, we could have also maybe offshore wind production. So more or less what I would say, that INA is going in line with big traditional oil and gas companies, still using most of the capex for oil and gas, but also more and more of profit generated from oil and gas business is reinvested in renewables.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, Mr. Miroslav. I mean, I think it was quite an insightful answer. I'm pretty delighted to hear that INA is expanding to the green hydrogen production and the power plants, of course, with the electricity and solar going on. I think this is a very big thing to INA to contribute as well to the renewable sectors and to also the green hydrogen production as well. So thank you very much for your insightful answer. And hopefully the region will go towards more clean energy and the balanced energy mix. So moving on to Mrs. Mercia, I wanted, we started our webinar with the questions about regulatory policies, etc. So this question is actually very based on policies as well. Mrs. Mercia, how do you see regulatory policies evolving in the Balkans to support renewable energy? There's a lot of course, the Balkans, we have a lot of countries in the Balkans, and each country has their specific regulations, of course, but mainly they have the more or less kind of a policy going on. But for example, how do you see this regulatory changing to be better? Is it the government that can support this? How can they impact on the private sector investment as well?
Yeah, of course. But as you mentioned, there are many countries in this region, and of course, when it comes to countries that are in EU, the situation is very straightforward and, let's say, a bit easier from the regulatory side, of course. When it comes to obstacles and from regulatory policies, obviously the countries that are not in EU are the ones that are actually causing, let's say, problems for the investors in those countries. So, for example, if I just mentioned the same example from the battery storages in Greece, that's just one of the examples of how smoothly it can go when when it's supported with, of course, from as well the government and regulatory policies. But then on the other hand, if you have other countries that are not in EU, all those regulatory policies, they could seem at first glance as a basically obstacle for the investors, and I'm still talking about basically investors in renewable assets here in this region. So, of course, for non-EU countries, all of the reforms are EU-driven reforms, and the countries, even if they are not in EU, they are following those reforms. But then it's a bit problem from country to country how responsive and how quick they are when it comes to setting those policies and actually making it easier for investors or even already existing producers to basically upgrade their projects. So of course it is good in it's not, of course, it's not all of that is that bad, but especially if we see in last few years the moving from feed-in tariff to competitive auctions when it comes to PPAs as well. So we do see that there are many PPAs that were signed in this region, especially in Romania, but of course there are many more bilaterally signed in the rest of the countries where we did see quite big production from new projects and new units, and especially the new projects yet to come. So basically the growth of PPAs is basically enabling investors and reducing the resilience on state subsidiaries. This is when it comes to PPAs, especially if they are bilaterally negotiated, there are not many regulatory policies that are actually on basically standing on the roads of investors to finish the procedure itself. There are some other obstacles there, but basically the very good thing is that since we are, like I said, seeing this boom of renewables in this region, that for the PPAs there are not many basically problems when it comes to this. Bigger problem is of course when it comes to grid and storage, because and that's something that each government needs to basically and ministries or the bodies that are actually in charge for this, that need to upgrade this in order to actually boost and to let investors and in general each country to continue their road. So yeah, basically as long as all those countries do follow all EU-driven reforms and basically give out the investors and project owners a clear path basically for their projects to build, then I don't see two big problems. Of course, there is always a way to upgrade them and to make it easier, especially in non-EU countries. But so far, I think we're on a good path there.
Exactly, Mrs. Marcea, I agree with you. I mean, of course, the Balkans has a lot of countries going on. So this webinar is more of a call to action to the actual governments to, to update their regulatory policies, to make it easier for the investors to come and invest within the Balkans. And of course, the investor will choose the country depending on how easy and how accessible the policies of the actual country is. So hopefully, with the new administrations going on, with the new policies that is going on the Balkans region, we are seeing a lot of improvements as well for the investors to come and potentially invest within the Balkans region. However, of course, there will be a lot of competition going on in the EU as well. So mainly it's up for the actual governments to update their policies and for the investors to choose which kind of policies that can fit with their company as well. And based on this, they can, of course, invest within that specific Balkanic country as well. So thank you so much, Mrs. Marcea, for the answer. Moving on to Mr. Marsola, as I said, there's a lot of things going on with the current, financial landscape, regulatory as well. But how do you really assess the current regulatory and financial landscape for energy infrastructure? I mean, mainly in Croatia, there's a lot of energy infrastructure going on and there's a lot of investment. But for example, how do you really assess the regulatory of the region, the land itself? How can you give certain kind of feedback that this is what I want to invest in, this is what we want to see after 20 years, our investment going on good, that we can benefit as well, even in Croatia or even outside of the Croatian landscape as well? How do you really assess the current financial landscape, let's say?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, partly I answered in the first one, and I think Merciha also partly answered this question when she was just answering a few minutes ago. I mean, again, I need to repeat, we have quite diverse number of and very different countries in the region, so it's difficult to say and give the answer for all the countries in one answer. I mean, first of all, if we look at, as I said, different political association, only two countries, I'm talking now countries of former Yugoslavia, really Western Balkan, we only have two countries within EU. That's one thing. Another thing and big advantage of Croatia is on the way to join also OADC, which would again give Croatia a big advantage for investments, in general investments, regardless whether it's energy or anything else. Also, if we look at Croatia, Slovenia as well, they have from credit agencies, they have A ratings, so investing, so recommendations to invest. If we look at all the other countries, they are far from that. Mm-hmm. So how I see the situation, normally working for bigger corporations, you would see them being much more cautious. And they would like to see country joining different associations, preferably EU. They would like to see some ratings from credit agencies, at least getting to the situation, okay, invest in a moderate way. But before that, they would be just observing and waiting for the situation to improve. On the other hand, you can have approach, more entrepreneurial type of approach, where entrepreneurs would be saying, okay, it's a risky situation, but that's the right time to invest because I can maybe invest and the total cost of the investment would be lower because there is not such a strong competition. So if I look at Croatia today, for sure we have, I mean, a lot of, and I would say almost all key players in renewable energy in Europe, but also on global level, are looking Croatia and to invest in renewable energy, and quite a number of them are already present in solar and wind business. And as I was saying before, unfortunately, due to grid problems, there are a lot of projects from big companies that are currently on hold. So potential investments in land works because there is a grid, but connection between coastal part and inland is a problem because there is no grid. Now, if I look at other countries, yes, there are geopolitical issues, there are credit ratings that are not favorable for investment, but I know that quite a lot of them are observing situation, present, talking and looking for the situation to improve because there are a lot of opportunities. What we heard before also, it's a hydro potential, which I did not mention, especially in Bosnia, and much more potential also in wind in Montenegro, Macedonia, Kosovo, also wind potential in northern part of Serbia. So I see quite a lot of potential, but the key thing is that situation must be stabilized in majority of the countries in the region.
Totally understandable, Mr. Mersol. Of course, there's a lot of things going on in the Balkans, and of course, assessing this kind of regulatory and the grids problem as well. We do have a specific even panel in the Ninth Balkans Energy Summit, which is called "It's All About the Grid," which talks about the problem of the grids, of course.
Yeah.
But these assessments comes mainly from what kind of problems and situation that we are facing in the Balkans, and how we can, of course, solve them. And the first way to solve a problem is to actually identify that we have a problem indeed. And of course, assessing these kind of investments really depends from a country to another country. And hopefully, the investors will see that potential. And I do see a comment from one of the audience. He said, the higher the risk, the higher the return. And of course, I think, we already, it's a quite popular quote, but I really like this as well. But mainly the higher the risk, the higher, of course, the return as well. Of course, moving on to Mrs. Mercia. I'm just going to remind our audiences, if you have any kind of questions, please write them down on the chat. And then at the end, if we have time, we can go through them. So if you have any kind of questions, please feel free to write them. So Mrs. Mercia, I just wanted to ask you, there's a lot of companies and investors, mainly they're looking to enter the Balkans energy market. Maybe they have a lot of questions going on, but they really want to know, what are the key factors that they should consider in terms of, risks, returns, long-term sustainability, why, from your expertise, why they should choose the Balkans in terms of investment. I mean, of course, we already know that the higher the risk, the higher the return. But in terms of what should they consider before, going into the Balkans and investing?
Yeah, of course. Very interesting. I mean, except for the standard things that investors are always, of course, looking into it as, let's say, economical stability, political stability as well, then regulatory, regulation, as we mentioned before. There are, of course, many other things to consider. And if I'm looking from the investor perspective, of course, that they need to look into, of course, when the project is already done. Let's say they got all their permits for building their wind or solar, let's say, units somewhere. What's going to happen with the licenses for connecting to the grid? Because in all those countries, due to boom, basically, of renewable sources that are already connected to the grid, now we are facing with the very, very long lines of new potential producers that are basically waiting to be connected to the grid. And this is, of course, not something that investor once, actually, because it's of course not from the profit side acceptable to basically wait for the your project to be connected to the grid. So then in this case, for example, as an investor, then of course you just need to take care of your project in a way that you also have a solution, like some kind of hybrid solution for your production, and let's say a combination of solar and battery storage. And I know that for a fact in Serbia, it's already a standard that's for all new projects connected to the TSO grid. It's already mandatory to have 20% of the capacity as well within the storage. So you need to have the projects together with your production units. You need to have solution for the storage, because we are facing, of course, the problems either when there are periods of oversupply or some other problems, of course, because we do know how that the production from renewable sources is it's not constant, it's intermittent production. So that this is something that new investors as well, they need to take care of this when basically preparing their project. Then another thing that they are facing as a problem is basically concluding PPA itself. And we at Montel also see this, especially in this team that we have for the PPA consultancies, that there are many struggles also on a seller and buyer side when it comes to concluding PPA, and these procedures can take many months and years actually. So it's also good thing to basically to have in mind when you're entering all those markets, to have a good connection in those markets, or either to have a company that will do it for you, let's say, because it's like I said, when the process of all the permits and building the project itself is finished, or even if you're concluding PPA, before the project starts, this is it's very important to have on time concluded PPA, and of course in that case also the investor needs to be open to different types of PPAs to be concluded. I know that all of them are looking for the solutions, let's say PS-produced PPA, which is of course amazing, but considering the different profiles of customers in this region or any other region when it comes to these PPAs, investors or producers, they do need to be open to different models of PPAs. And also when it comes to another factors when entering into those markets, it's also some, let's say, long-term outlooks, power outlooks, when it comes to long-term outlooks for power prices in this region. And this is again influenced by starting with geopolitical things that are happening, then basically all the EU reforms that are basically pushing this region as well to adapt to all the regulations and to phase out the coal unit, which on a first glance comes as of course favorable for all those project developers, but there are also many other problems within all these. When we're talking about just phasing out coal units, it sounds very simple. Yeah, we're gonna phase them out and then just replace them with renewables. It sounds very simple, but it's so far from simple sentence on the first place, because just replacing it with renewables, we can replace it, but it has to come with many more upgrades when it comes to great flexibility on the demand side, supply side, basically increasing as well grid interconnectors. So because this is also something that will impact on new basically customers on the demand side to come to this region, and that's also crucial for all the business developers and investors. So if we are not having stable grid and stable grid, let's say, then we will not see data centers coming to this region. And for example, in Italy, in northern part, let's say, when it comes to data centers that are let's say in that part of Italy, they are choosing that because of the good voltage and grid stability. So if we want to see that kind of customers in this region, which is again crucial for business developers and investors in renewable projects, then we see how all those basically factors are very much connected, and we are not always talking about just phasing out coal and having new renewables. It's there are many other things to take into account. So hope I answered this and it didn't go too far, but within this beautiful basically sector, I always loved it and I always will, but it's not, nothing is everything is actually very connected, and many things need to be considered. And it's very basically dangerous to just talk about, okay, let's go green, and just have that topic on your mind without having in the background and thinking about all other aspects that need to be taken into account. So
No, thank you very much, Mr. Mercer, for the insightful answer. I mean, the investors, I think here you go, you have your fully on answer about the Balkans and the region. But one more thing that I wanted to add is, of course, research. Try to have as much as research as you can. Whenever you are going to a specific kind of a market, you need to, of course, do your research, study your homework, and then invest in that specific region as well. And I'm sure there's a lot of a lot of returns even in terms of the Balkanic region as well. There's the higher the risk, the higher the return, and there's a lot of things going on in the Balkans as well that the investors needs to take a look at and invest. um, for the last questions, I'm just going to combine the question because we need to respect the time of our speakers as well and the audiences. So for the last question that I'm going to ask Mr. Miroslav, mainly it's two questions, so I'm just going to combine them. So Mr. Miroslav, what kind of advice would you give to the companies and investors looking to enter and expand to the Balkans region? And what is the emerging trends or technologies that you will believe that it will shape the future of energy infrastructure? So mainly, what kind of emerging trends that you are seeing right now in the Balkans, and what kind of, as a last thing for you to say, what kind of advice that you are willing to give from your expertise to the investors who is looking to expand and to the Balkans as well?
Thanks, Karam. Maybe I will first build on your comment saying investors should do their research, their homework. I fully agree. And even in this, let's say, pre-screening of the market, they should have a local partner. And I fully agree with Mersiha here. She mentioned having a local advisor, a local company they partner with, or advisor they use. Because in most of the countries, or I can say almost all of the countries, you have quite strong bureaucracy. So all procedures are very lengthy. And I think all potential investors should understand really the whole situation, regulatory framework, and that's not always easy, and it's complicated. Also, it's not only question of availability of the grid, it's question of connection to the grid, and that also have some specifics from country to country. And with a local advisor and local experts, it can be much, much easier. So even when companies doing their initial pre-screening before they make any decision, I think they should use a sort of local advisor or already have a local partner to do the pre-screening and basically make a final decision whether whether it's worth investing or not. I mean, one thing which is positive about the investment is that EBRD is active in all these countries, and they are trying to support as much as possible good projects. But on the other hand, you have, of course, commercial banks in all the countries, and all of them are carefully analyzing all the projects. And sometimes you can see that projects are not bankable, basically. But for me, the good message for investors would be that, okay, EBRD is around, so and active in all these countries. So that's on the first part of your question. Second, some trends and how I see it. I mean, I also, as I said, partly answered your question. So in the whole region, we will still see fossil fuels and energy coming from fossil fuels being in the product mix, definitely about 50% for another 20, 30 years. So there is still some electricity production from coal in Kosovo, in Serbia, in Bosnia, although renewables are entering into the product mix. And I believe that partly for industry, but also for households, electricity from renewables will grow, and there maybe in certain number of years, majority of the countries will have electricity, more than 50% of electricity for households, for the cities illumination from renewables. But if you think about transport and industry in the region, for me, still oil and gas will be predominant. And also, we need to bear in mind that it's only Croatia and Slovenia that are really properly covered with a natural gas grid. Bosnia not, and other countries, Serbia a bit, but basically there is still a lot of space for natural gas growth in the region in the whole product mix.
Exactly. I mean, thank you so much, Mr. Miroslav. Of course, there's a lot of things going on in the Balkans, and doing the research and having a local partner is something indeed that you need to have. Of course, this is what INVR does. Of course, we help you, expand to the market that you are willing to expand to. We are your energy partner as well. And this is why we have these upcoming educational webinars to, educate you more about specific kind of regions as well. So thank you very much, Mr. Miroslav, for your answer. So for the final question with Mrs. Marcia, just a small reminder that this is the final question. And if you have from the audience, if you have any kind of question for Mr. Miroslav or Mrs. Marcia, please put them in the chat box, and I will leave 3 minutes we can answer them very quickly. So Mrs. Marcia, the last question is, I'm gonna combine them as I said. So what are the main challenges investors face when entering the Balkan energy market? I'm sure that we emphasized it a lot, but for example, how important is upgrading the energy infrastructure to support future energy needs as well? How important is it to upgrade the infrastructure itself, how we can build on it so we can move on and to actual, because right now we know the challenges, right? But how do we actually upgrade the infrastructure that we already have to expand and to have the support that the market needs as well?
Yeah, of course, as we mentioned it's extremely important, because we're not going to see much more renewable projects built in this region if the grid is not following it. So basically, within building grid additional interconnectors, then boosting basically flexibility of the grid, which can be done also on a production and on the demand side. On a production side, I just see the highest potential within the already existing hydro units and utilizing them a bit better in order to increase the flexibility of the system on a production side. And of course, on the demand side, there are many examples, especially in the, let's say, Scandinavian countries, that we could basically follow up. I know when we say something like this, we are always also commenting it, yes, but that's Scandinavian, this is Balkans. But we are talking about very simple things and projects that actually can be done on some kind of in some micro projects that could actually improve some things. So the increasing, like I said, interconnectors, grid flexibility as well, and of course having the consumers who are actually able to improve their demands and basically offer as well some ancillary services. And it's not like we are not seeing this already, especially in Croatia within COER, let's say. They're doing that's also one of the examples of how it can be actually done very nicely also on a country level within few countries. So if I see all this region, and if we go through all the basically challenges and good things that are happening, there are many good examples to follow. So we also need to do some kind of copy paste between countries for within different topics, just to upgrade the situation. But of course, it's definitely and Mr. Miroslav, of course, reminded us of that. But basically, upgrading gas infrastructure and in at least where it's existing in Greece, Croatia, and Slovenia, let's say, and of course building the new one, that is extremely important, because having the gas units it is important, and it still will be important in the future for the, of course, at least for the balancing at the end, because we know the advantages of that kind of production units. And of course, within many projects, when it comes to LNG, and we see how actually now all the commodities that we maybe in last 5-10 years we didn't look at those that much in this region, and they didn't seem that important. In the last few months we see how actually the situation with the gas and with LNG can extremely drive the situation in energy markets in our region as well. So it's very important to take all of that into account, for investors, but also for other market participants. But yes, of course, to conclude, the upgrading of energy infrastructure in this region is definitely mandatory if we want to see boosting of renewables in the future as well. Yeah.
For sure, 100%. I'm sure the energy infrastructure is, of course, the topic of the day, and we are very much, it's very important to the Balkans as well, and of course the grid problem. And this is it mainly for the webinar. I'm just gonna have one question from the audience, and just to, of course, interact with them, and that will be our webinar. Of course, if you have any kind of questions going on, feel free to message Mr. Miroslav and Mrs. Marcia on their LinkedIn profile. Feel free to reach out to me, and then we can answer your question. But the only question right now that I'm gonna put on the screen is from Eva, and she is saying, how could the government update the regulatory policy to help encourage investments and further development of the energy industry in the Balkans? So mainly, Mr. Miroslav, if you want to, based on your expertise, answer this question, of course, and Mrs. Marcia can, answer her from her side as well. But what do you think? How can the government update the regulatory policies as well from their side?
I mean, how they can update regulatory? Good question. But just to put it in a wider context, I do not think that investments depend only on regulatory policy. I mean, it's a mix of different things, what I was trying to explain before. I mean, first of all, the geopolitical situation of the country, whether the country is member of EU or not, member of OECD or not, how active EBRD in the country is or is not, and how also credit agency are rating the country. So basically, those are all the parameters that investors look at. And one of the things is also regulatory policy. But in general, less geopolitical risk, country being member of EU, country having higher credit agency ratings, procedures and regulatory is getting improved. So in general, if other parameters are on the good side, also you have less problems with the bureaucracy and regulatory issues.
Exactly.
If the country is not in EU, it does not have a good financial and credit ratings and so on, then also the whole regulatory environment is getting worse. So I see all this going hand in hand. So I don't think that government can improve only regulatory part. The country itself must improve all the parameters what I was mentioning before to get higher on the priority list for the investors.
100%. No, I totally agree with you. But let's see from Mrs. Marcia. Mrs. Marcia, what do you think regarding this question as well? And do you agree with Mr. Miroslav, or do you have any kind of other insight as well?
Yeah, I mean, there is not much to be added here. It's very, very straightforward, as Mr. Miroslav said, and it's basically one bunch of different things to upgrade, not only regulatory policies, but I mean, it is important as well from country to country, depending on the situation in those countries, basically to for governments basically to have it in their national plans as well. The exact like amounts of money for the, let's say, next years, decades, that's the money that is going to be invested in grid, then there are many countries that are lacking as well the plans when it comes to storage units, and that's definitely something that is basically making it impossible for investors to even consider something if there are no even plans from the government side. So I mean, but again, the bottom line, as Mr. Miroslav said, that's not the only thing and the only obstacle here, and there are many other factors that we discussed basically today.
100%.
That's investors are.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Mrs. Merceja. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things to work on in terms of the countries. And thank you all for the webinar today. Hopefully you can join us at the 9th Balkans Energy Summit from April 29th to April 30th in Athens, Greece. If you need anything, feel free to leave your comment on the chat and reach out to me or Mr. Miroslav or Mrs. Merceja. And thank you very much for the webinar, and hope to see you on the 3rd webinar again. And thank you, Mr. Miroslav, for joining us, and Mrs. Merceja as well. And hopefully see you on the 9th Balkans Energy Summit, and have a great day ahead. And thank you very much for watching, and thank you for our beloved speakers, and wishing you a beloved day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye.